Last night, or maybe the night before, you did something you've done hundreds of times. You picked up the phone before going to sleep, just for 5 minutes. Maybe you checked Instagram, maybe YouTube, maybe you just scrolled through nothing in particular. 5 minutes became 20. You put the phone down and told yourself it was fine. This morning, you woke up slightly foggy, slightly slower, not dramatically, just not quite right. You had a meeting or a conversation or a decision that you actually had to make, and it went slightly worse than it should have. And you did not connect those two things, the phone and the meeting, because why would you? They happened 8 hours apart. The phone was just relaxing, the meeting was just work. There was no obvious line between them. But there is a line. You just cannot see it. And this invisible line between a decision and its true consequence is one of the most expensive thinking errors that intelligent people go on to make. Not once, repeatedly for their entire lives. My name is Chetan. Welcome to the First Principles Club, where we don't just study ideas, we rebuild them from ground up. See, in 1952, the British government banned coal fires in London to clear the smog that was actually going on to kill hundreds of people. Residents switched to oil and gas. Within 10 years, carbon emissions had increased. The infrastructure required to produce and distribute oil and gas generated more total emissions than all the coal fires combined. They solved the problem in front of them and created a larger one 3 steps ahead. Your phone before bed, a government's energy policy, it's the same structure, just a different scale. There is a name for this thinking error. It is called first order thinking, and there is a name for the antidote, second order thinking. First order thinking asks what happens next. Second order thinking asks what happens after what happens next. And then what? And then what? And then what? 3 words, that is the entire concept. And then what? The reason it is rare is not that it is actually difficult, it is that it is very slow, and we live in a world that has made slowness feel like a failure. Let me explain. Here is the thing nobody tells you about being smart. Intelligence speeds up your thinking. That is the whole point of it. You see a problem, you identify the solution faster than an average person. You implement it, you move on. Except, when you move fast, you skip steps. Not deliberately, not lazily, you get to the answer so quickly that the steps between the problem and the solution happen below conscious awareness. Think about this. The last time you made a decision and actually went on to regret, not a decision that you made with bad information, a decision you made without thinking it all the way through. Chances are you made it fast. Chances are also that you felt very obvious at that moment. A slower thinker actually has an advantage here. They are forced to move through each step because they cannot skip them. They see gaps you actually flew over. Your speed, the thing that makes you good at simple problem, is exactly what makes you dangerous at some of the most complex problems you face as a human every single day. Let me show you exactly how this is working in your life today. Not in government institutions, not in mega corporations, in you. Let's take an example. Let's say you want to get fit, so you sign up for a gym membership. First order thinking is that this is the correct thing to do. Gym leads to exercise, exercise leads to fitness. And then what? The gym is 20 minutes away. Total time per session that you're going to spend is going to be 90 minutes. 3 sessions a week is 4.5 hours of time you do not currently have. After 3 weeks, you stop going. The membership sits unused. You feel slightly worse about yourself than before you actually signed up. The decision to get fit made you less likely to get fit. Another example, you want to grow your career fast, so you say yes to every opportunity because more inputs is more outputs. That is exactly what first order actually tells you. And then what? Saying yes to everything means you are never fully present in anything. Your quality drops. Your reputation for depth, your most valuable long-term assets, erodes slowly and invisibly. In 3 years, you're actually known as someone who does many things adequately rather than somebody who can do one thing absolutely exceptionally. The decision to grow fast made you grow slower. Let's say you want to resolve tension with someone important to you, so you avoid the difficult conversation. At first order thinking, this is actually right. You keep the peace and you do not want to instigate another problem in that situation. And then what? You already know the answer, you have lived it. I do not need to finish the sentence, you are actually framing that answer in your mind as I speak. That pause that you just felt, that slight discomfort of unfinished thought, that is second order thinking working in real time. You actually just did it. Here is what I want you to notice. Second order thinking is not complicated. It is one question asked twice. The reason almost nobody does it consistently is not intelligence. It is not lack of knowledge. It is actually something deeper. Patience. See, we people are actually addicted to the resolution. The moment we have a first order answer, an answer that feels right, that resolves the immediate tension, we stop. Stopping feels like efficiency. It is actually the most expensive habit we have. Ray Dalio built Bridgewater Associates, the largest hedge fund in the world, on a practice he actually calls the thinking through time. Before any significant decision, he runs the same sequence. What happens immediately? And then what? And then what? What after that? He applied this in his own company in the most personal way possible. See, in Bridgewater's early years, Ray Dalio actually faced a tension that every founder faces. 1. Grow fast and capture the market, or grow slow and protect the culture that makes the work exceptional. First order thinking is always going to push you to think that growing fast means more clients means more revenue actually is more influence. That is the absolute correct decision to make. And then what? Growing fast requires hiring quickly. Hiring quickly means hiring people who fit the headcount need but not the culture. Culture starts dropping, decision quality drops, returns drop, clients leave. He chose to grow slowly, to turn away capital and clients when the right people were not yet in the place. Bridgewater became the largest hedge fund in the world, not despite that decision, but because of it. Here is how you can actually run this. Start by writing the decision in one sentence. Not a paragraph, one sentence, because precision is everything and vague decisions produce vague consequences. Then ask, and then what? And write every immediate consequence you can actually think of. Be exhaustive, that is exactly the goal of this exercise. Then for each of those consequences, ask it again. And for each of those, one more time. The third level is where the insight that changes the decision actually lives. Then look at the full list and find the one consequence you were hoping would not be there. That, ladies and gentlemen, is your real decision point. Any decision, 10 minutes, works every single time. Howard Marks, the billionaire investor behind Oak Tree Capital Management, wrote about this more precisely than any person alive. He said, first level thinking asks, what is the right answer? Everybody can do this. Everyone actually does, as in when we speak and when they make decisions. Second level thinking asks, what does everyone else think the answer is, and how is that wrong? Think about it. If your thinking produces the same conclusions as everybody else, you do not have an edge. You have consensus, and consensus is never where the real opportunity lives. Now, I want to tell you something about second order thinking that almost nobody discusses on the internet. It can be wrong, not occasionally, systematically, in a specific situation that is easy to fall into once you start this way. Most bad decisions are not made by stupid people, they are actually made by intelligent people who stop thinking one question too early. Let me explain with an example. In 2000, Kodak's leadership ran second order thinking on digital photography. First order thinking was digital grows, film declines, revenue drops. Second order, if we invest in digital, we cannibalize our own film business, our highest margin product. We lose twice. Third order, defend film, exact maximum profit, fund the transition on our own timeline. This was the second order thinking, sophisticated, logical. the consequences were traced correctly, it went on to destroy the entire company. Because there was a fourth order consequence that absolutely nobody talked about and discussed. What happens if a competitor does not share our concern about self cannibalization? What happens if we have nothing to protect and everything to gain by accelerating the very transition we are carefully managing? They eat your market while you are actually managing your own decline. Second order thinking failed Kodak not because the analysis was wrong, because it stopped at the question they felt safe. The question is never how many orders deep do I go. The question is always, am I asking the right question I am most afraid to ask as a person? Because the most expensive consequences are always the ones you have a reason not to look at. Every thinking tool has a failure model hiding inside its success mode. Let's be honest, second order thinking is no different. The goal of this is not to be right, the goal is to be wrong without being absolutely destroyed. Second order thinking is not a decision making tool, that is the surface. Underneath it is something more fundamental and something far more powerful, and I want you to pay very close attention to this. It is a practice of intellectual honesty. The reason most people do not do it consistently is not that they are not smart enough, it is that they are not honest enough with themselves about which consequences they are choosing not to look at. The phone before the bed, the difficult conversation you are avoiding, the decision you have already made but not examined past the first order answers. You already know the second order consequences are. You just have not asked it yet. The British government in 1952 was not foolish. They were educated, experienced, well intentioned people facing a genuine crisis with the best information that they had. They just stopped thinking one question too early. That's all it takes. One question too few, one level too shallow, one step short of where the real consequence actually lives. A decision that looked like a solution becomes a problem wearing a solution's mask. You now have the question, and then what? Ask it before every decision that actually mattered. Ask it twice, and then ask it one more time. Before you go, I want to leave you with something I have been sitting with for months and have not resolved yet. In your life specifically, not in theory, in your life, is slowing down to think a competitive advantage? Or is it something you can only afford once you have already won enough to absorb the cost of being slower than everyone else around you? It's a deep question. Think about it. I do not have a clear answer. I suspect you do not either. That is the comment I want to read. If this kind of thinking is what you're after, questions that do not resolve cleanly, ideas that stay with you longer than it is comfortable, First Principles Club is exactly where you should be. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification. Tomorrow, we are going to decode Charlie Munger's complete bundle of mental models. Not a list of framework, the systems underneath the framework. How one mind built a way of thinking that made him one of the most consequential investors of the 20th century. It's going to be up right here. Think from scratch. Build what matters. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I will see you tomorrow.